In a recent report on technology and education, the OECD stated students today are global, digital, and mobile. Education must keep pace. And if I had to make that simpler, I'd just say, because kids like TikTok, school needs to look more like TikTok. And that's an argument many people, not just the OECD, are making today. Is that a valid argument? Does that hold true? Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's From Theory to Practice, where I take a look at the research so you don't have to. Now, I've got a bit of an announcement. Next month, I have a new book coming out called The Digital Delusion: How Classroom Technology Harms Our Kids' Learning and How to Help Them Thrive Again. So I figured for the next set of videos for our series, let's dive into each different chapter of this book and pull out a research article relevant to that chapter. So today, let's just start with Chapter 1, The 5 Myths That Built EdTech. Now, as you can probably guess, this chapter looks at the different beliefs, the different ideologies, the different arguments people use to say why EdTech needs to be in school, and it shows why all of those don't carry water. And as an example, one of the myths is here, that free choice leads to better learning, that when you give kids free rein, learning goes up. Now, whereas that might be true in very certain narrow circumstances, like when you sometimes let kids choose the content or their mode of presentation, what most ed tech developers have come to understand that means is that we must adapt pedagogy to student preference. Who knows learning better than the learner him or herself? So a lot of ed tech is embracing this idea of let them pick how to learn. Let them pick the pedagogical strategies. And that's going to bring us to our paper today. The paper I've selected today is called Should Educators Be Concerned? The Impact of Short Videos on Rational Thinking and Learning. Now, as you know, kids today are addicted to short form videos, whether that's YouTube or TikTok, these little 30-second to 60-second clips, that seems to draw and hold their attention. So of course, ed tech comes on board and says, well, if that's what they're doing outside of the classroom, then surely that's what they should be doing inside the classroom. And they call their short form videos things like micro-learning, learning sprints, bite-sized lessons. If you ever heard these terms, that's ed tech trying to make learning match what kids want to do outside of school. Now, the researchers in this paper did 2 studies. The first was just a survey of kids asking them about their short form video habits. How many short videos do you watch a week? Do you do like an hour a day, 2 hours a day? What do you do? And after that survey, they then gave everyone the German test battery for rational thinking skills. Basically, this is a standardized test that looks at 4 different dimensions of rational thinking, but it really just boils down to questions that force you to think. Can you see through gaps in logic? So here's an example question on the test. All dogs are brown. Spot is brown. Therefore, Spot is a dog. Is that a valid or an invalid syllogism? Hopefully you caught on that is invalid. Just because Spot is brown, that doesn't mean he's a dog, man. Spot could be a bear or a muskrat or an otter. So it's a bunch of questions like this that test your rational abilities. And what did these researchers find? When they compared short form video use to rational thinking, the 2 correlated at negative 0.26. That means approximately 13% of variation in rational thinking can be traced back to how often do kids watch these short form videos at home on their own time. So already we're starting to see bleed. Your practices at home will bleed into your ability to think rationally, think deeply in an educational setting. But then study 2 of this research, they actually put this thinking to the test. So here's what they did. They asked a group of kids to watch 3 minutes worth of short videos. They then split them into 2 groups. One group did some learning by watching 2 more minutes of short form videos, and another group did some learning by reading text. They basically took the words from those videos, put them into text, and these group of kids simply read it like you would a textbook. They then quizzed everyone on content knowledge and gave them that same rational thinking quiz. And what did they find? When it came to learning, the kids who read, who had the text-based learning, scored about 18.1 out of 25, while the kids who watched short-form videos scored only 14.8. So that's about 18% less just by changing the medium through which we're learning. And when it came to rational thinking, the kids who read text scored about 9.2 out of 14, while the kids who watched short videos scored only 8.3. That's about a 10% drop. So we see the kids using videos are doing worse than kids using more traditional pedagogical methods. But wait a second, the researcher said, maybe this is all just priming. Maybe by forcing everyone to start by watching short form videos, we tweaked how they would think and that kind of changed all our results. So they ran the same study again, except this time, No short videos at the start. Just come in, we're going to jump right into learning. You watch videos, you read, let's see what happens. They then took a look at what's called shallow learning. Basically, they analyzed everyone's results, and out of a score of 5, they said, how deeply were you engaging with the material? Were you just getting surface level facts, or were you able to draw actual deep conclusions from the learning you were doing? And what did they find? When they didn't prime kids, so no videos before the experiment, they scored a 2.65 on that scale. But for all the kids who watched the videos first, they scored a 3.1. That's a 17% higher chance that they were only going to look at the surface rather than go deep with the material. So, okay, what do we learn from this research? 3 very important things, and I'm sure you already got them. 1, pedagogy matters. What we teach matters, yes, but how we teach is all important to what kids are going to learn. And when it comes to effective pedagogies for learning, who are the experts? Teachers. This is literally what they've spent years, decades of their life training themselves to do. Figure out the best way to move students through learning. Now, when EdTech comes along and they farm that out to students, what happens is learners end up chasing preferences. They know what feels good. They know what comes easy to them. But when it comes to learning, what feels good, what's easy, is often not what's going to lead to the deepest learning. Next, we see priming seems to matter. Whether kids watched videos or not before the experiment substantially changed how they later engaged with the material and learned from it. So this goes back to tech access in schools. If your school allows free access to tech, say cell phones, between classes, this means before your class, there's every chance your kids are watching videos. They're spending 5 minutes priming themselves to think in a very specific way. Now, when they come into your classroom, there's every chance they're going to be looking at your material in a shallow way. You're going to lose some depth. So this goes back to a lot of schools are banning cell phones now from class. No, this is another reason why you've got to ban it across the whole day. What we do between classes also matters to our learning. And it's not just smartphones. This is access to all tech. Where are all screens in our schools, and how are those being organized to make sure we're not making these accidental priming mistakes? And last but not least, we see habit matters. What our kids do at home on their own time will influence how they engage with and interact with material in our classroom, so long as the two contexts are similar. So let's say my bedroom at home has red walls, and whenever I'm in that bedroom, I act like a fool. Now I go to school, and let's say my classroom has red walls, where that context is going to trigger that type of thinking, and there's every chance I'm going to start acting like a fool in your classroom. But flip it, if I have red walls at home, but the classroom has, say, green walls, that's a different context. There's less of a chance I'm going to view that as similar to my bedroom, and less chance I'm going to act the same now in both contexts. So that's going to bring us back here. When the OECD says students are global, digital, and mobile, and education must keep pace, this is a myth across the technological world where people think school must mirror the real world, where what we do here has to look exactly like what we do there, or kids won't be ready. And here we see, no, the more we make school look like home life, the more likely our kids are to take that aberrant home life behavior. And we know that how they use digital tech at home isn't good. They're not using it for learning, they're using it for entertainment. But when they see that same tech in school, they're now going to carry that over, and they're going to start trying to use our tech for entertainment rather than learning. So here's where we see school has to be a unique environment. Rather than telling people this has got to look like this, we got to say, no, school has its own context. What we do, how we act, how we think in this environment will be very different than any other environment you're in. And to make sure that sticks, we're going to make sure this environment looks significantly different. You won't have access to the same tools you have out there. You won't be able to wear the same clothes you wear out there, say the same things, drink the same drinks, do the same stuff. Here's where we see school works best when we hold it as a sacred, unique context, and we build that context around one thing, learning. Anything that benefits learning, we can bring that in. Anything that's going to harm learning, we block that stuff out to help students maintain in their minds a difference between how I act out here and how I need to act in here. So, okay, that's a look at chapter 1 of my new book, The Digital Delusion. The book will be out on December 7th, 2025. And if you'd like more information, you can take a look for us online at www.lmeglobal.net. Or if you want some more resources, you can look up our Learning Blueprint program, both for teachers and students. Otherwise, thank you all so much for hanging out, and I can't wait for the next one. See you all then. Bye, y'all.